My beloved child. Before the first light stretches across the horizon, before the world remembers your name, someone whispers it in the silence. Not because they have all the answers, and not because everything between you has already been healed, but because their heart has reached a place where pretending no longer feels possible. While the sky is still painted in shades of blue and silver, an unexpected prayer rises from their lips, a prayer carrying your name with a tenderness that surprises even them. If you could hear those quiet words, you would understand why this morning feels unlike any other. The room around them is still. A soft breeze slips through the window, stirring the curtains as the first birds begin their gentle song. The clock moves forward with quiet determination, yet time seems to pause for one fragile moment. They close their eyes, not searching for perfection but searching for courage. There was a season when pride spoke louder than love, when fear convinced them that silence was safer than honesty. Yet this morning, something inside them refuses to remain hidden. They remember the moments that changed everything, the conversation that ended too quickly, the smile they tried to forget, the dreams they quietly buried beneath ordinary days. Every memory arrives not to haunt them, but to awaken something they believed had disappeared forever. Their hands tremble as they fold them together. The words do not come easily. They begin again, slower this time, allowing each sentence to carry the weight of what has never been spoken aloud. Please, they whisper into the stillness, watch over the one who has unknowingly changed my heart. Give them peace where I once brought confusion. Give them hope where I left questions unanswered. And if our paths are meant to cross again, prepare both of us in ways we cannot yet understand. As those words leave their heart, something unexpected happens. The burden they have carried for so long does not disappear, but it begins to feel lighter. Not because every problem has been solved, but because honesty has finally stepped into the room. They realize that real love cannot survive behind masks forever. It must eventually breathe in the open air, even if vulnerability feels uncomfortable. Far away, you begin your own morning without realizing that someone else's sunrise has become connected to yours. You move through familiar routines. Perhaps you reach for a warm cup of coffee. Perhaps you stand by a window watching golden light slowly cover the streets. Everything appears ordinary, yet there is an invisible thread weaving through both mornings. You cannot see it, but your heart senses that something is quietly shifting beneath the surface of everyday life. Meanwhile, the one praying for you remembers a promise they once made to themselves. They promised never to risk disappointment again. They convinced themselves that keeping distance would protect everyone involved. But this morning dismantles every wall they carefully built. They begin asking difficult questions they have avoided for far too long. What if fear has stolen more than it has protected? What if the life they imagined was incomplete because it never allowed room for hope? What if the story they thought had ended was only waiting for a new beginning? Outside, sunlight grows stronger. Shadows retreat across the floor, revealing details that darkness had hidden only moments before. The changing light becomes a quiet reminder that clarity often arrives gradually rather than all at once. They understand that healing rarely announces itself with dramatic signs. Sometimes it begins with one sincere prayer spoken before anyone else is awake. Sometimes it begins with choosing honesty over certainty. Their thoughts return to you again. They remember your laughter echoing through an ordinary afternoon that somehow became unforgettable. They remember the kindness you offered without asking for anything in return. They remember the way your presence challenged them to become a better version of themselves instead of remaining comfortable with who they had always been. Those memories no longer feel like painful reminders of what was lost. Instead, they begin to resemble gentle invitations toward the future. Still, one unanswered question remains, refusing to let them rest. Is it already too late? That single thought lingers in the quiet room. They know that time changes people. Seasons reshape hearts. Opportunities can quietly disappear while no one is paying attention. They wonder whether you have already closed the chapter they are only now brave enough to reopen. The uncertainty humbles them. For the first time, they stop praying only for their own desires and begin praying for your happiness, even if that happiness leads somewhere they never expected. Yet as the morning continues, something catches their attention. Resting inside an old journal is a folded piece of paper they have not seen in months. They do not remember leaving it there. Slowly, they unfold it, expecting an ordinary note. Instead, they find a single handwritten sentence staring back at them. The moment they read those words, everything they believed about your story and theirs begins to change. And that is only where this morning truly begins. The folded page rested between their fingers, softened by time at the edges, as though it had been waiting patiently for this exact morning. Sunlight slipped across the paper, revealing handwriting they recognized instantly. Their heartbeat slowed instead of racing, because some moments are too sacred to rush. The sentence was simple, yet impossible to ignore. The things meant for your heart will find you when you finally stop running from them. They searched their memory, trying to remember when those words had been written, but the answer stayed just beyond reach. It felt less like discovering an old note and more like being quietly awakened by a truth that had been waiting for years. They sat down without realizing it, letting silence speak where explanations could not. Every decision they had made out of fear suddenly looked different. The opportunities they once believed were closed no longer appeared locked forever. Instead, they resembled unopened doors that had required a different version of themselves to step through. They whispered another prayer, not asking for immediate answers, but asking for the courage to become someone capable of receiving them. It was the first time they understood that love is not sustained by perfect timing alone. It is nurtured by hearts willing to grow before they meet again. At nearly the same moment, your own morning unfolded in an unexpected direction. A familiar melody drifted through the air from somewhere nearby, stopping you in your tracks. It was a tune you had not heard in a long while, one connected to memories you believed had quietly faded. You stood still, not because the music was loud, but because it awakened something gentle inside you. For reasons you could not explain, you felt an urge to pause before rushing into the rest of your day. The ordinary suddenly carried an extraordinary sense of purpose, as if unseen threads were weaving together moments that had once seemed unrelated. Far away, the one praying for you opened an old wooden box tucked away on a forgotten shelf. Inside were ordinary keepsakes: a faded photograph, a ticket from an evening that ended with laughter, a pressed flower carefully hidden between 2 pages of a notebook. None of these objects held value because of what they were. Their value came from what they reminded the heart to remember. Holding them again, they realized that real connection leaves quiet fingerprints across a lifetime. Even when conversations end, kindness has a remarkable way of refusing to disappear. As the morning stretched toward midday, an emotional shift settled over them. Regret no longer held the loudest voice. Gratitude slowly took its place. Instead of mourning every missed opportunity, they found themselves thankful that someone had once entered their life deeply enough to transform the way they loved. That realization changed everything. They stopped asking, "Why did this happen?" and began asking, "Who am I becoming because of it?" The second question opened possibilities the first one never could. Without knowing why, you found yourself reflecting on your own journey. You remembered moments when your strength had gone unnoticed, when your patience had been tested, when you chose compassion even after disappointment. Those memories no longer felt heavy. They felt like stepping stones leading somewhere meaningful. You sensed that every quiet season had prepared your heart for something requiring greater wisdom than you possessed before. Although you could not yet see the destination, you no longer feared the path itself. Meanwhile, the one carrying your name in prayer noticed something unexpected resting beneath the old photograph. It was an envelope they had never opened. Dust covered its corners, suggesting it had remained untouched for a very long time. Their name was written on the front, but beneath it was another line that caused them to catch their breath: "Open this only when you are finally ready to choose love over fear." For several moments, they simply stared at it. Countless questions filled the silence. Who had written it? When had it arrived? Why had they never seen it before? Every instinct urged them to open it immediately, yet another part of them understood that some words deserved to be received with a settled heart rather than restless curiosity. After one long, steady breath, they carefully broke the seal. The very first line inside the letter made tears gather in their eyes, because it revealed a truth neither of you had ever imagined, and that truth would change everything waiting beyond this morning. The letter did not begin with instructions or promises. It began with a confession. It read, "The greatest turning points in life rarely arrive when two hearts are perfectly prepared. They arrive when both people become willing to lay down the stories that kept them apart." They lowered the page and closed their eyes. Those words did not feel accidental. They reached into places hidden beneath years of quiet endurance. Every assumption they had carried suddenly demanded to be questioned. They had believed distance meant the connection was fading. They had believed silence meant they had been forgotten. Yet the letter challenged every conclusion they had built. What if the empty spaces between two lives were never evidence of absence? What if they had been seasons of becoming? Across the morning, you experienced a moment that seemed almost too ordinary to notice. As you stepped outside, a cool breeze carried the fresh scent of rain across the air, though the sky remained bright. The world felt strangely alive, as though every leaf, every beam of sunlight, and every distant sound had slowed down long enough to invite you into deeper awareness. Without planning to, you found yourself taking a different path than usual. It was a small decision, barely worth mentioning, yet something inside urged you not to turn back. Meanwhile, the one holding the letter continued reading. "There will come a morning," the next lines revealed, "when you stop asking whether you are worthy of being deeply loved. On that morning, your life will begin changing before your eyes notice it." Their breathing grew steadier. They realized how much energy had been spent trying to earn what could never be earned. Genuine love had never been a prize for flawless people. It had always been an invitation to become honest. They smiled through quiet emotion, recognizing that every difficult chapter had slowly removed another layer of fear. The person sitting in that room was no longer the same one who had hidden behind uncertainty. At the same time, your heart was being gently awakened in ways you could not fully explain. Someone greeted you with unexpected kindness. It lasted only a few seconds, yet it reminded you how powerful small moments can become. You began noticing details you had overlooked for weeks: the warmth of morning light against a building, children laughing somewhere nearby, the peaceful rhythm of everyday life continuing without hurry. For the first time in a long while, hope did not arrive as excitement. It arrived as quiet confidence. The letter continued with another unexpected revelation. One soul cannot carry an entire relationship alone. Both hearts must choose the journey. Those words settled deeply within them. For years, they had carried unnecessary guilt, believing every broken moment rested entirely on their shoulders. Now they saw the past with greater compassion. Neither of you had been perfect. Both of you had been learning. Both of you had been growing through experiences that neither could have rushed. Instead of feeling trapped by yesterday, they began feeling thankful that healing had been unfolding even when neither of you could recognize it. Then something extraordinary happened. Tucked inside the final fold of the letter was a small photograph they had never seen before. It was not dramatic. It showed an ordinary sunrise stretching across calm water. On the back, a handwritten date caught their attention immediately. It was today's date. Their pulse quickened. The photograph had clearly been written years earlier, yet somehow it carried the exact day now unfolding before them. Beneath the date were only 7 carefully written words. When this morning arrives, don't be afraid anymore. The room became impossibly still. Questions rushed through their mind faster than answers could follow. Who could have known this day would matter? Why had this message waited until now? And most importantly, what was supposed to happen before this sunrise came to an end? Far away, without knowing any of this, you paused for reasons you couldn't explain. Your phone vibrated once. A single new notification appeared on the screen. The sender's name made your heart stop for just a moment. But before you could open the message, the screen went dark. And somewhere else, the one who had prayed for you realized that this morning was never meant to end with a prayer alone. It was about to become the beginning of a decision that neither of you could take back. The dark screen reflected your face for a brief moment, leaving you with nothing but your own expression and 1,000 possibilities. You pressed the button to wake the phone again, but the notification had disappeared. There was no message waiting to be opened, no obvious explanation, only a strange certainty that something meaningful had brushed against your morning and quietly stepped back. Instead of frustration, an unexpected calm settled over you. Not every answer announces itself immediately. Some arrive only after they have changed the person searching for them. Across town, the one who had whispered your name in prayer remained seated beside the window, the photograph still resting in their hands. The sunrise captured in that image looked almost identical to the one now glowing beyond the glass. They realized they had spent years believing that extraordinary moments would arrive with dramatic signs. Yet the deepest transformations often entered life softly, asking only to be noticed. They stood, folded the letter with care, and placed it close to their heart as though carrying more than paper. They were carrying permission to move forward. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations filled with regret. Instead, they imagined what honesty might sound like if fear were no longer writing the script. The words forming in their heart were simple. They did not promise perfection. They did not attempt to erase the past. They simply carried a quiet desire to be genuine. That realization felt more powerful than any carefully planned speech because authenticity has a way of reaching places polished words never can. Meanwhile, your own path took another unexpected turn. An elderly stranger sitting on a park bench smiled as you walked by. Before you had the chance to continue, they spoke with gentle warmth. "Don't ignore the people who make your heart feel peaceful," they said. There was no explanation. No further conversation followed. They simply returned to watching the morning unfold, leaving those words suspended in the air like the final note of a beautiful song. You continued walking, but the sentence stayed with you. It echoed not because it demanded attention, but because it quietly unlocked something you had forgotten. Peace had become a better guide than certainty. The one praying for you felt the same lesson taking shape from another direction. They understood that chasing perfect timing had delayed countless honest moments. Waiting until every fear disappeared had only given fear more room to grow. This morning was teaching them something entirely different. Courage was never the absence of uncertainty. Courage was choosing to move with a sincere heart even while questions remained unanswered. With renewed resolve, they opened a drawer containing things they had not touched in years. Beneath old notebooks and forgotten keepsakes rested a small envelope addressed in their own handwriting. Curiosity replaced hesitation. They opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet they had written long ago during one of the most uncertain seasons of their life. "If I ever become brave enough," it began, "I hope I never confuse protecting my heart with imprisoning it." They could barely remember writing those words, yet they recognized the younger version of themselves speaking through every sentence. It was as if the person they used to be had reached across time to remind them of a promise they were finally ready to keep. At that very moment, you found yourself standing before a quiet place that held meaning from your own past. You had not planned to come there. Your feet had simply carried you without much thought. Familiar details greeted you: the gentle rustle of leaves, the warm light stretching across the path, the comforting stillness that only certain places seem to preserve. Standing there, you realized how much you had changed since the last time you visited. The questions filling your heart were no longer about what someone else might do. They had become questions about the kind of person you wished to become. As the morning moved closer to noon, two separate journeys began leaning toward the same horizon without either of you fully realizing it. One heart had discovered the strength to stop hiding. The other had discovered the peace to stop waiting in fear. Neither story was complete, but both had quietly crossed an invisible threshold from which there would be no return. Then, just as they reached for their keys to step outside, something unexpected slipped from inside the folded letter and drifted onto the floor. It was a second page. Unlike the first, this one had never been opened. Across the sealed fold, written in careful handwriting, were words that caused every breath to catch. Read this only after you decide whether love is worth the risk. Their hand reached toward it. But before the seal was broken, someone knocked gently on the front door. "My beloved child." The gentle knock echoed through the quiet home, not with urgency, but with the calm certainty of a moment that had patiently waited for its time. They stood motionless for a heartbeat, their hand resting above the unopened page. For so long, they had believed that life would eventually force them to choose between the past and the future. Yet now they understood something far more beautiful. The greatest choice was never between yesterday and tomorrow. It was between fear and love. Slowly, they lifted the sealed page and opened it. Inside, there was no prediction, no impossible promise, and no mysterious instruction. There was only one final message. If you are reading this, it means your heart has already begun to heal. Do not waste another sunrise wondering whether you deserve happiness. Walk toward it with honesty. Speak with kindness. Listen without pride. And remember that the people meant to leave light in your life are never found through fear, they are recognized through peace. Those words settled gently within them, dissolving years of doubt that had quietly shaped every decision. Tears filled their eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. They realized they had spent so much time waiting for a sign that they had almost overlooked the transformation already taking place inside them. The miracle was never hidden in the letter. It had been growing within their own heart all along. With quiet determination, they opened the front door. Standing there was not someone arriving to rescue them, nor someone carrying all the answers. Instead, it was an old friend who smiled warmly and simply said, "I was thinking about you this morning. Something told me I should stop by." In that ordinary conversation, they discovered an extraordinary truth. Love does not always enter with dramatic declarations. Sometimes it begins with simple acts of courage, unexpected kindness, and hearts willing to become present again. The future they longed for would not be built in one unforgettable moment. It would be built through countless small moments of sincerity. At that same hour, you felt an unexplainable peace settle over your own spirit. The questions that had weighed on you no longer demanded immediate answers. You realized that your value had never depended on another person's ability to recognize it. You had been growing through every season, even when progress felt invisible. Every disappointment had quietly strengthened your compassion. Every unanswered question had deepened your wisdom. Every lonely morning had prepared you to appreciate genuine connection when it arrived. And somewhere beyond what either of you could see, two lives continued moving forward, not because destiny erased every obstacle, but because both hearts had finally become willing to meet life with openness instead of fear. That was the true power of the morning prayer. It was never about changing another person. It was about allowing love to transform the one who was praying. When hearts choose forgiveness over resentment, gratitude over regret, and courage over hesitation, the future begins changing in ways that cannot always be seen immediately. Relationships become healthier. Conversations become gentler. Decisions become wiser. And even when life follows an unexpected path, peace remains because it no longer depends on perfect circumstances. So if this story found you today, let it be a gentle reminder that every sunrise offers another opportunity to release what has been weighing on your heart. Speak words that bring healing. Extend grace where you once held disappointment. Believe that growth is happening even during the quiet seasons. The love that truly belongs in your life will never require you to abandon your integrity or lose yourself. It will encourage you to become the fullest, kindest version of who you were created to be. May your mornings be filled with hope that outshines yesterday's worries. May your heart find the courage to trust again after seasons of uncertainty. May peace guide your decisions, wisdom shape your words, and love grow stronger within you each new day. And may every sunrise remind you that beautiful beginnings often arrive quietly, one faithful step at a time. If this fictional inspirational story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could use a little hope today. Until we meet again, may your path be filled with light, your heart with peace, and your days with countless reasons to believe that every new morning carries the possibility